Well, good evening, and thank you for those who are watching the interview or preparing to read this on the blog. My name is Sarah Kay Bierle, and I'm with Emerging Civil War. And this evening, we have Kevin Pawlak, also with Emerging Civil War, here to talk about his newest book. I'll show the cover here. Well, there we go. It is called Such a Clash of Arms, the Maryland Campaign, September 1862. So, Kevin, congratulations on the new book.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Thanks for having me tonight.
Yeah. So I thought we could just chat a little bit about some of your favorite things in the book. And we can start off with, what does this book really highlight and offer when someone's going to pick it up and enjoy it?
So I wanted it to be catch all of the Maryland campaign's military story, though admittedly it was tough to fit all that into just 30,000 words. But what I really tried to do was to pack in everything related to the Maryland campaign, uh, again from a military perspective. So it covers all of the movements leading up to the Battle of Antietam itself, including the fighting at South Mountain, Harper's Ferry, Shepherdstown afterwards as well, and some of the cavalry fights as the armies moved around Frederick and eventually beyond Frederick, and then a couple of chapters on the battle itself of Antietam. But I wanted it to be sort of a one volume catch all of information for somebody that's brand new to the campaign that can pick it up and get sort of a palatable version of the Maryland campaign itself. And I also kind of, in a way, wrote it for myself as something that I can pick up and just use as a refresher about the Maryland campaign when looking at things from a higher viewpoint than the nitty gritty tactical detail of the battles that were fought.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful book. It really captures that, I think, goal that you were going for. I was looking through it and reading some sections of it, and it really is a great introduction. And the pages are just beautiful. Lots of big pictures in it, good maps. And one thing, this is just a personal favorite of mine, it has these nice flaps on the back and front covers, so it's easy to mark pages. I could definitely see taking this book out onto the battlefield or using it on the campaign routes for that quick reference. So
Yeah, I was very pleased with how it turned out. It was, I mean, it's always great, as you know, opening up a new book that you get in a box, but to open this one up and to really look at it was just incredible. It was a really great experience.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I felt the same way when I got a copy of it. I was like, wow, this is a beautiful book. So congratulations again.
Well, thank you.
So, Kevin, you've written a lot about Antietam and you're involved with the Antietam Institute. What's your Antietam story? What got you into Antietam? What drew you there?
I'm really not sure. As weird as that sounds, I know Antietam was not the first Civil War battlefield that I visited. It was Gettysburg. Same thing for many people. And I when I was looking to go to school, moving from Western New York down south, whether that was to Southern Pennsylvania or beyond, I looked at Gettysburg College. Um, just looked, didn't really get a warm fuzzy feeling about that. That's nothing against the college, it was just personal preference.
Sure, sure.
And my dad and I decided to go on a trip to look at some schools in Virginia that had Civil War history trips, and we had heard through a mutual friend of ours about Shepherd University, where I ended up going. And immediately I looked at it online, and I wasn't all that impressed. Just goes to show, I guess, don't judge a book by its cover. And so we were driving down I-81 on our way into Virginia, through the Shenandoah Valley, and we saw a sign for Shepherd University, and we were on no schedule. And my dad said, "Well, why don't we go take a look?" So we did. Looked at the school, ended up getting a tour that day. Really liked it. And then the second time I went back to Shepherd for a second visit, we took a different route, and I realized just how close Antietam was. And I still don't know why, but I can remember driving by on the bypass around the western edge of the West Woods and seeing the 15th Massachusetts Monument, the Wounded Lion Monument on the west edge of the woods, and just realizing how close I was to Antietam. And I think Antietam is some, Gettysburg, of course, has gotten its due in history, and rightfully so. I'm not knocking it at all. But Antietam, I felt, still really had a story to be told, and there was just something about the place that, Gettysburg is commercialized. Sharpsburg is just such a small town. It's a beautiful area, and so something has drawn me to Antietam. to the stories, to the battlefield, and I think there's still a lot more stories and interpretations that need to be told about the Maryland campaign. So something just still always drags me in to that battlefield. But it started with just simply bypassing the battlefield on Route 65 north of Sharpsburg, and from there it just kind of all went downhill, as I like to say, at least for my family. And visited, multiple times while I was in school there. Started working there as a volunteer, and just fell in love with it.
Were you one of the youngest licensed battlefield guides at Antietam? Did I get that story right?
I think so. I'm not sure who is the youngest. I'm trying to think. I was 20, I guess, when I became a guide there.
Okay.
Right before the 150th anniversary of the Maryland campaign.
Okay. Very good. So you mentioned the wounded lion statue, and I think I saw a photo of it in here. There are beautiful color photos in this book, as well as historic images that are really easy to see and appreciate. So I was wondering, is there an image in this that you got to include in this book that resonates the most with you, that was like, it has to be in there, whether modern or historic?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think there were probably a couple that I included in there. And both of them were part of the cornfield program during the 150th anniversary of the Battle of Antietam. I can remember getting up there. I think I got to the park at 4 or 5 in the morning on September 17th. Walked around through the North Woods, the East Woods, on the way down to the cornfield, and can just remember that morning vividly. Of the fog, there was gun smoke from reenactors firing off their muskets and rifles in the cornfield, and it just created this real sense of, like, it's almost one of those moments where the weather was almost perfect to what it was 150 years ago, and to be able to experience that on the 150th anniversary was just really incredible. And I'm usually not one for grabbing many pictures when I go out on battlefields, but I couldn't help myself at that moment grabbing shots of the sunrise over South Mountain with that low ground smoke and fog hanging low, and just hanging over the cornfield. So when I found out it was going to be color pictures, and that the publishers wanted modern images included in that, I thought I've got to have those two, because that was just such an incredible experience for me to be able to be there on the 150th anniversary. And again, it's still one of my most vivid memories of my time at Antietam.
That's really special. Thanks for sharing that story. I'm just looking here to see if I can find the photo easily to be able to show it.
I think one's right in the cover, right in the front page there,
Ah,
or not on the cover, but yeah, close, I believe.
in the front. Oh, yes. Here, let's see if I can show the camera. I know you already know what it looks like. Well, you
There's
can
one of
get
them.
viewers, you can get an idea. It looks much sharper in the real print than is probably going to appear there on the screen. So tying in maybe a little bit with your photography story, and I know because you've been involved at Antietam Battlefield in so many different ways, this has probably been a long process, if you will, of researching and writing. But do you have a favorite research or writing moment of working on this book?
I think it was just for me that I wanted it to be, again, a book that somebody that was brand new to the Maryland campaign could pick up and get a grasp of the military side of things. But
Mm-hmm.
I also, as I've studied more of the Maryland campaign and more of Antietam, I wanted to put in some of my interpretations, and play around with some different writing elements. So a couple of things that I did that sort of stuck out in my mind and really helped me grasp just how much was going on at one time is most studies in the Maryland campaign have separate chapters on Harper's Ferry and South Mountain.
Right.
I didn't want to have separate chapters on those two. I wanted them to be blended together into one chapter, so that readers could get a sense of all this is going on at the same time. That, it's very hard when you're reading one chapter and it talks about September 9th to the 15th, let's say, and then you jump to another chapter and it's talking about that same time frame,
Mm.
to be able to blend those together. And I wanted to show Harper's Ferry and South Mountain as one part of one operation, if
Right.
you will, that these battles were they were separated, of course, by the mountainous terrain and the Potomac River, but they were all going on at the same time. And what happened at South Mountain could dictate what happened at Harper's Ferry, and what happened at Harper's Ferry could dictate what was going to happen at South Mountain. So that was really eye opening for me, playing with that and seeing just what was going on at exactly the same time. During those operations. The other thing with the Antietam chapters that I wanted to play around with was that Antietam has often been portrayed as a battle with three phases. You have the morning phase around the cornfield area in the West Woods, midday phase around the Sunken Road, and then the afternoon phase at Burnside's Bridge. And I know there's recently been a lot of pushback about that, which I would agree with. I mean, you think about 9:30 on the morning of September 17th, you have fighting going on in the West Woods, just west of the cornfield. Fighting is starting down at the Sunken Road at that very same time. And by that point, too, the Ninth Corps is beginning to move in its attacks against the Burnside Bridge. So there's a lot going on all at once. So these phases don't really exist. But for writing simplicity and just for making it easy for people to understand, including myself, what I've really come to understand is dividing the Antietam battlefield into two places, and basically what I call the northern front,
Okay.
which would be everything, if you can picture in your mind the Antietam battlefield, everything from the North Woods down to, hate to use a modern landmark, but basically to where the observation tower sits
Okay.
at the end of the Sunken Road. So that would be the northern front, as I call it. So that would include the cornfield fighting, West Woods, Church Plateau, and Sunken Road or Bloody Lane. And then everything from basically the observation tower south all the way to Snavely's Ford would be the southern front, as I called it. So the Fifth Corps fighting and the Federal cavalry fighting at the Middle Bridge area, and then of course the better known fighting at Burnside Bridge and what's come to be known as the final attack on the afternoon of September 17th. So just kind of being able to get that out there and put it into writing. I'm sure, like you, I can think about this stuff in my head, but until I really put it into writing, I don't know if it's going to make sense or not until I write it. But once I do, it seemed to flow well for me. So I hope readers will find that it does for them also.
Absolutely, and it's exciting to be bringing this, I guess, newer part of interpretation, if I'm understanding correctly, because when I started learning about Antietam, I kind of learned it in the three sections. So and maybe some of that's just it happens because of how we do the driving tour at the battlefield, or those stops, sort of thing. But it's really exciting to see this newer interpretation coming in, and you're being able to share that in a really readable book for a new visitor to the battlefield, or someone who's just wanting to learn about Antietam for the first time.
Yeah, so I hope that seasoned veterans of studying Antietam and the Maryland campaign can pick it up too and get something new out of it. That's the hope.
Absolutely. I was enjoying that as I was scanning through the book, and I'm definitely looking forward to giving it a very thorough read before my next visit to Antietam here in the near future. So kind of continuing on the writing theme, how long did it take you to write once you started the process?
So I had a lot of the building blocks, thankfully, put together with previous books that I had done, like the book I co-authored with Rob Orison, To Hazard All, which was part of the Emerging Civil War series. So we had a lot of the campaign nailed down at that point, but it was a little bit different too, because of course that book is a tour guide, whereas this was more of a narrative. But it was taking a lot of the research that we had done for that and sort of wordsmithing quite a bit, changing up quite a bit of the text, and then melding it into a narrative. But it took me, I would say, overall about a year to get everything written, go through several rounds of editors. I had plenty of great friends that edited it and read through it and offered me excellent comments. So probably about a year from start to finish.
Very nice. So, couple of quick lightning round questions. Do you have a current favorite place on the battlefield?
Current favorite place on the battlefield. I've really come to be drawn to the northern end of the battlefield lately. And I know it sounds cliche to say it, but the cornfield area. And I think not just for the fighting that took place there, the famous fighting that took place there on the morning, but all of the jockeying for positioning and planning that was going on between Lee and McClellan in that section of the field on the afternoon of the 17th.
Absolutely. I think the afternoon maneuvering up there is so interesting to look at. And I think with the shall we call it older interpretation of the three phases, it's really easy to overlook that. So I'm excited about these new opportunities to look again. All right. So favorite commander on the field at Antietam?
Ooh, I'd have to go with George Hartsuff. Not one of the best known, but and really is only somebody that's on the field for a matter of minutes
Okay.
before he's wounded and carried from the field. But George Hartsuff just has an incredible story. He's wounded in the Seminole Wars. He survives one of the worst wrecks on the Great Lakes prior to the Civil War, so he's almost like a cat with 9 lives. Is wounded pretty quickly in the fighting at Antietam, but by my calculation, I think his brigade suffers the highest losses of any Union brigade on the battlefield. Typically, that's an honor, if you want to call it that. That's been given to Harrison Fairchild's New York Brigade on the south end of the field. But by my math, which I'm a historian, not a mathematician, so take it what you will. But by my math, I think Hartsuff's brigade suffers more casualties, both in number and proportionately, than Fairchild's brigade does. And I think Hartsuff's brigade hasn't gotten the attention that it deserves. And it's just a fascinating story, not just the commander itself, but the men as well that Hartsuff leads into battle.
Fascinating. I will have to check out their battle position the next time we're up there doing tours or something. So anything else you want to share about the book, the writing process, things like that, that I might be missing or not sure what to ask here?
I think again, I mean, it was a really fun process for me because I think, it's easy for us as historians to just write, and turn out hundreds of pages of text. But it really was an interesting process of trying to take something that I had done a lot of research into and try to fit that research into a 30,000 word narrative, but then also make it again something that can blend easily for a seasoned veteran of Antietam or somebody that's a new reader. So hopefully, people in both parties will be able to understand it and again learn something new, hopefully, from all that. But it was a really fun challenge, and I really enjoyed it. And I just think Casemate did such an excellent job with the book. I was really happy with how it turned out, and I hope people feel the same when they get a copy in their hands.
Absolutely. And it has a beautiful timeline in the front, great pages. We've talked about the images in here. You've included the further reading. There's even an index for those of us that love indexes. So if folks are wanting to get a copy of it, where is the best place to send them to look for it, either in person or online?
So if they go right to Casemate's website, it's there. Casemate has also gotten it onto the Military Book Club and History Book Club. So if
Congratulations.
folks are members of that, they can find copies there. And then for anybody that's listening that might be at the Emerging Civil War Symposium coming up at the beginning of August, I'll have copies for sale there as well. And I go out and speak quite a bit regularly too. So if anybody happens to run into me, more than likely I'll try to have a few copies on hand.
Sounds great. And we'll put links to Casemate in the description here on YouTube and also on the blog as well to make it easy. Is there social media that you want to invite people to follow you on or other online places that folks can be looking for you to connect?
Emerging Civil War, definitely. Obviously, still writing pretty regularly for the blog there. I have had a blog for a while that was called Antietam Brigades, and it's admittedly since gone a little dormant, but I'm working on revamping it and changing it up a little bit as well. So if people just search for Antietam Brigades, the blog is still live. It's been quiet for a little while, but I'm working on bringing it back so people can find me there as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Congratulations again on the book, Kevin. Thanks for taking the time to chat with us about it. And we will look forward to picking up copies and having you sign them for us.
All right, thanks very much for having me, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thanks.